When you think of winter 2022 anime, the first two that come to mind are probably Attack on Titan and Demon Slayer. But today I want to talk about an under-the-radar anime, one of the underdogs, and this one could surprise everyone. And the anime I'm talking about is The Genius Prince's Guide to Raising a Nation Out of Debt. Now I know what you're thinking, that sounds just like another one of your basic long-ass title light novel adaptations that we get like 30 a year, so why should I watch this one? Well, first off, am I the only one that kinda likes those long titles? I mean, they're kinda convenient. It pretty much tells you the synopsis without you having to look it up, and for a lazy bum like myself, I really like that. But as far as this anime goes, while it delivers on the promise of the title, it's so much more than that. You see, I first found this anime on the anime subreddit, and the title intrigued me so much that I read the light novels. And really the two main reasons of why I was interested in the story is because the title promised a smart MC and also kingdom building. Both of those things are things I just enjoy in stories, even when the story and the plot is not that deep. In fact, I definitely read too many light novels and watch too many anime that other people probably don't enjoy because the story's kinda bad, but I still enjoy because it has those factors. I like to call them junk food stories because they just follow a formula that people enjoy, but the story is actually just really bad. So honestly, that was the expectation I went into the story with because the title is your basic long-ass title light novel. But after I read all of the English translated light novels, I can confidently say that I fell in love with this story for so many different reasons, and it's become one of my favorite light novels. First of all, the story does deliver on what the title promises. The plot centers around the main character, Prince Wayne, and he's the genius smart MC. He becomes the acting king of the kingdom of Natra after his father falls sick, and thus starts his journey of building out his kingdom from a nation in debt. So right off the bat, the story really delivers on the two things I was looking for with a smart MC and kingdom building. With Wayne being a smart MC, you really get to see him strategize with warfare, economics, and politics, and you really get the major things that I love about a smart MC story, which is seeing the main character own people, but also the story kind of unfolds like a mystery where you're trying to figure out how the main character is going to outsmart his opponents. With the other factor of kingdom building, you also get that great satisfaction of progression, especially with this story where Wayne really starts from the bottom because his nation's in complete debt. So in terms of the two aspects I was really looking forward to in the story, they deliver. But on top of that, there's a lot of entertaining factors about this story as well, because despite him being a genius prince and having these great five-head moments, the majority of the time he's not this like super serious calculating main character. In fact, the best way I would describe him is a troll. When he's not like trying to outsmart people and has a chance to just be himself, which we see pretty often, he's really just an 18-year-old kid. In fact, one of the ongoing gags in the story is that Wayne is not really trying to build out his kingdom to be this grand kingdom and take over the world. He really just wants to get out of debt, make some money, and retire. But instead, as he builds out his kingdom, more and more problems come to him and he has more work to do. So that really adds some nice lighthearted humor to the story, which makes it an enjoyable read, but it also makes Wayne a much more likable and relatable character. And the story does a really great job of balancing the serious moments and the comedy, where despite the fact that Wayne is a troll and he really likes to tease people, and at the end of the day he just wants to retire, that never really comes too much into conflict with all the other serious stuff going on, with all the politics and negotiations that's playing out. So at the end of the day, you get this really great balance of seriousness and comedy, which when it's done well, it works really well. So with the comedy alone, it really elevates this story to another level in terms of just entertainment. But even with the extra entertainment added in, I wouldn't say that makes a story not junk food. If anything, it kind of just becomes more enjoyable junk food like a Shake Shack or Five Guys. But this story actually takes things to another level beyond junk food because the world building, themes, and characters of this story are absolutely incredible. Let's start by talking about world building because that's probably something you expect in a story about kingdom building. You expect to find out about the different countries and the geography, but if it was just a junk food story, it would only explore those things at a surface level. However, this story doesn't do that because it really examines things at a deeper level where you explore things like the culture and politics and just so many other elements of this world. They actually give you lore and stories about how different countries operate their governments and how that can affect the people and its culture. Geography isn't just used to show you where everything is, but it actually plays a factor in warfare and politics and economics. Religion is also another major factor in this world, but it's not something that's just there. Instead, you really get to see the effects of religion, like how holy wars are used for a political advantage, how pilgrimages could affect economies, and of course how it could dominate people's perspectives and affect societal norms and laws. Another thing that's pretty prominent is how governments are used and the philosophy behind them. The story, of course, is set in an ancient time where monarchies are pretty prominent, but instead of just just establishing it as the norm and just accepting it, you have different characters that actually think about the philosophy of a monarchy and like how people come to power. You actually have different conflicting ideas and different governments within this world. And as you read more of this story and explore more of this world, you can really tell that the author like really did his research and probably really enjoys this kind of stuff. He's not just building a story in an ancient time period just for the hell of it, but you can tell it was probably a time period he was really fascinated with, so he wanted to create a story within it, which then allows him to build this incredibly detailed new fantasy world. So the world building in this story is amazing and it really elevates the kingdom building of the story, but what really takes this story to the next level is what he does with this world that he's built. Because at the end of the day, what really makes a great story in my opinion are the characters and the themes in the story. Let's start with the themes of this story, because this story really does not hold back in diving into deeper, darker themes. Themes such as racism and sexism and slavery are not just prominent in the story, but they're actually critical to the plot. You not only see these themes in the world building and how it affects everything on a global scale, but even more so, you explore these themes individually through the characters. I've talked a lot about the main character Wayne already, but the second most prominent character in the story is probably his assistant Nim. And Nim on first glance might just look like your average girl in an anime, but her physical features are actually really important because her white hair and red eyes belong to the race of the Flam, which is really discriminated against in this world. Essentially, the Flam are the only minority group within this world because everybody else are just normal humans, and because of that, they're heavily discriminated against in half the world where they're hunted and used as slaves, while in the other half of the world they're allowed to be free, but they're still not really accepted as equals. So in that aspect, racism, discrimination, and slavery are a pretty big factor in the world, and through Nim we really get to see that firsthand. And by exploring these deeper themes through these characters, it just adds so much more to their story. And honestly, if I had to pick one thing that I enjoyed the most about this story, it's the characters. Because not only are these deeper themes explored through these characters, but the relationship between these characters and each character's individual goals and conflicts are all super interesting. The relationship of Wayne and Nim, for example, is a breath of fresh air, because in so many different fantasy stories, there's such a basic premise that is always set up between the main male character and all the other female characters, where it's either this crazy harem of all these girls falling for him, or the girl's just a tsundere and eventually still falls for him. Instead, we don't really get that with Wayne and Nim, and we get a really realistic friendship. These two have known each other since they were kids, and the way they interact with each other, you can definitely feel that. There's not this ridiculous romance happening where Wayne is like making her heart flutter and she's like blushing all the time. Instead, they actually just talk like normal people and just really close friends, teasing each other and making fun of each other. But then in the serious situations, you can really tell how much they trust each other and respect each other and really care for each other. Now, I will say there is still a romantic element between them, but I think because of how realistic their relationship with, it makes the romance work even more. Actually, the romance side of it, you barely ever see in the story. You only get like small hints of it, and there's never those like dramatic moments of like one of them falling for the other one. But because of that, I feel like I'm a lot more invested, because you're just watching two people that genuinely care for each other grow closer and closer. And that realism, not only between these two characters, but pretty much all of the characters in the story, makes the characters my favorite part of the story. The characters don't really follow your basic tropes, and they all have their own individual goals and act realistically. Like Wayne's little sister, for example, in a basic junk food story, she would have been just that little sister that likes her brother and would have been a little creepy. And I will admit, when she was first introduced, I was definitely afraid of that, because she does really look up to Wayne, but you very quickly find out that she only likes him as a brother. There's no weirdness to it. And on top of that, she actually gets some good development in the story where she improves herself to be more capable to stand next to her brother. Through the other characters in the story, we also explore more deeper themes and see how they progress. And all of that is still balanced out with the comedy and lightheartedness of the story. And when you bring all that together, it makes for a terrific story, and it's become one of my favorite stories, and I think it's the anime that could really surprise people in winter 2022. The only question I really have for it is the studio, because I never watched anything from them before. But if the animation and adaptation are amazing, I have no doubt that a lot of people will love this story.